Hi, everyone. Welcome to our author talk. My name is Allison Bainbridge, and I am delighted to introduce the author and his in-conversation partner today for a discussion of the book, Bob Ross's Happy Little Night Before Christmas, which may be the next holiday classic. Even after more than 20 years since his death, pop culture icon, painter, host, and teacher Bob Ross has never been more heralded than he is today. His memorable quotes, friendly face, and signature hairstyle grace merchandise and memes around the world. But the greatest things that make Bob as beloved as he is are ultimately the core values and his peaceful, joyful demeanor that encouraged his students and viewers to not only appreciate their natural talents, but to appreciate the natural world around them. Bob was an American painter, art instructor, and the creator and host of PBS's The Joy of Painting, an instructional painting technique television series that originally ran from 1982 until 1994. I believe that many people will be looking for gift books this season that bring joy and a smile as we enter into our second Christmas during the COVID crisis. This book is perfect for families, fans, and painters of all ages, and is the perfect addition to any holiday tradition. The author, Robb Pearlman, is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, editor, and pop culturalist. He has written more than 30 books, including Bob Ross and Peapod the Squirrel, Bob Ross, My First Book of Colors, the Bob Ross Cookbook, the Bob Ross Happy Little Creativity Journal, Bob Ross by the Numbers, and Life Lessons for Bob Ross. I really look forward to hearing about how Robb became such a Bob Ross fan. In conversation with Robb is Heather Butterfield, who is the marketing director at Smart Pop, Bembella Books, Pop Culture Imprint. She has worked in book publishing for over 10 years as an editor, marketer, and award-winning graphic designer. Heather is an MA in publishing and writing from Emerson College and currently resides in Los Angeles. And her cats may make an appearance, so be on the lookout. Heather, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Allison. And thanks to everybody for being here today. Rob and I are both thrilled to be with you all talking about Christmas in October, or November now. The months have changed quickly. So Rob, I guess to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about your new book, Bob Ross's Happy Little Night Before Christmas?
Hey, Heather, it's good to see you again. And happy holidays, everyone. It still seems a little bit too early to say that, but time and space don't have any meaning these days, so we could start saying it. And I think we could all use a little bit of Christmas right now, don't you?
Absolutely.
So, at heart, Bob Ross's Happy Little Night Before Christmas is a modern retelling and reframing of the classic Clement C. Moore classic poem, but we reframed it into a meditation on the holiday spirit and creativity. So it's sort of a holiday mashup of two great tastes that may taste great together. And I think by combining those elements, they elevate and amplify the best of both creators and make them even more accessible to everyone, especially the new generations.
Absolutely. Yeah. Rob and I were at New York Comic Con recently, and we had a Bob Ross Sandy up, and we were delighted to see even little tiny children knew who he was. So multi-generational. But I'm curious about how you got into Bob Ross, Rob. When did you start watching his show, and why has it stuck with you after all this time?
Oh gosh, I have to go into the Wayback Machine, but it's hard to think of life before Bob Ross, isn't it? I think he's had such an effect on everybody. So don't fact check me, but I'm pretty sure I first discovered him when I was in junior high. I remember coming home and our local PBS station, Channel 13, was on in the background, as it was most days. And I remember it being like just another, I mean, it's junior high, so there's no good junior high days, but like totally stressful day that happened. And I was sitting at the table trying to do my homework. And then I suddenly heard the most calming voice coming from the TV. And it didn't really dawn on me what he was talking about at first, but I just heard the tone of it, and I turned around and I walked over and I was like, oh, this guy's painting something. And then by the end of those 22 minutes, he was done painting this incredible, incredible landscape. So I was immediately hooked. I mean, first of all, the man had a giant afro. And back then, though you wouldn't believe it now, I had a giant head of curly hair too. So we had that going for us. And second of all, he was able to paint the landscape in 22 minutes, but and that, as amazing as that was, what was even more amazing was the way he was doing it. And I'm not talking about the technique, which was amazing, but I mean, just the whole Bob Ross of it all. I think he would probably be one of the first people to say that anyone could learn technique, but it's kind of what you as a painter bring to the canvas that makes the paintings themselves as unique as you are. And even back then when I was just watching him and learning about who he was and what he was trying to do, I was really struck by the unusual ability he had to make me, an audience member, feel like he was speaking directly to me, and not just sort of a generic, mass of audience of a million people. And I think it's because he actually was speaking to me. He was speaking to other people directly too. He didn't present himself or his work like a talk show host would, or any sort of like, big personality who had to appeal to this gigantic demographic of people. I think he appealed to a huge demographic of people because he was just being himself. And in his mind, and I'm sort of, hypothesizing here, but I think because he was speaking to them, me, and other people as individuals and as painters, we were able to appreciate that and see him for what he was. And here's the other thing, Bob was on TV and on screens, and he still is. So he was literally beamed into our homes, which I think is a much more intimate and personal way of connecting with people. We see movie stars on the big screen, or we see sports stars on a gigantic field, but when someone is, the screens back then were a little bit smaller, but when he was in our living rooms, it was just an easier, simpler way of connecting and connection with people. So, I just think Bob was this incredible combination of painter, of teacher, of television personality. But it all worked because throughout the entire run of the series, he was just authentically Bob as a person.
That seems like really powerful stuff for a junior high kid in particular, when you're kind of coming into yourself and the world is so big and scary and crazy and everything's changing. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, for anyone who wasn't counting as Allison read your bio, this is your 7th Bob Ross book. So why do you think he's such an inspirational subject for you? How are you able to come up with all these ideas?
First of all, thanks to Allison for reminding me of exactly why I'm so tired all the time. I think for a few reasons. First of all, I really took and still take what Bob says to heart. I try to think of mistakes as happy accidents. I try to remember that you need the darkness to see the light. I try to remember that your words and your actions matter. So the way you're expressing yourself and your tone matters too. Mm-hmm. And I think Bob's inspirational for me for the same reason he's inspirational to everyone else, because he, at heart, truly believes in your innate creativity. I think Bob Ross, like Mr. Rogers and LeVar Burton and Julia Child, didn't just tell you could do things, they believed you could. And they wanted to encourage you to do that. And because of all that, you believed you could do it too. I think we need to take a moment to say thank goodness for PBS, right? Yes. Support your local stations, because nowhere else could that sort of thing be as accessible to as many people as it was and really still is. So, now as a grown-up and as someone who's been working and living really at the intersection of book publishing and pop culture for years, I love working with books that bring out the best in their creators and their readers. So in a way, I think I like to try to channel Bob a little bit as much as I can when I'm working with people, with writers and illustrators who I'm helping shape their work, but also with other editors and marketers and designers, people literally in every part of the publishing process, all of whom are incredibly creative, incredibly innovative, full of interesting and new ideas, who are willing to try things, who are willing to make mistakes and willing to go on the journey with you, to get that book out into the public, to then inspire readers to do their own work and creativity and live their best life.
Yeah, absolutely. You've said a lot about Bob's ability to inspire and bring out the best in people creatively and as well as in their personalities and just how they are in the world. And I don't know, do you think that has something to do with why Bob is so popular now, so many years after his death and the heyday of his show?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Bob said there was a painter in everybody. You just had to let them out of yourself. I think the question of Bob's current popularity has lots of different levels and layers. On a practical level, there's just more access to Bob these days. Back in the before times, Bob was on once every weekday. And if you missed him on that half hour, you missed him. That was it. You either had to wait an entire weekend for Monday to come around, or you at least had to wait another day for it. So the time you were able to spend with Bob and invest in that experience was really it was valuable, and it was treasured, and it was important. That being said, there were times, I will fully admit, that while lying on the couch listening to Bob talk about his painting, I would just fall asleep completely. So I'd miss maybe the last 10 minutes of it until the PBS music would start again, and I'd be roused. But it's a little bit different now with Bob just being able to be on any screen in your home, because if you've got a screen, Bob can be there. And I think that's fantastic, because it gives so much more access to Bob and his work and his art and his passion for it to people who don't necessarily have easy access to PBS or even a TV. Watching a clip of him on YouTube, or seeing him in a commercial, it's all of that sparks the creativity that I think Bob had always wanted to spark in other people. So, when he first started, I don't know if you know this, but Bob would do like individual painting classes, and he did a tour of malls across America.
Oh, wow. That must have been fun.
Yeah. I mean, to be a fly on the wall of that chess king in the back. And I think that was Bob's first foray into really making connections with those large groups of people all at once. It was, 10, 20, of course it grew as his popularity grew. And then when The Joy of Painting hit the air, his audience grew because of that. And now with the internet, it's expanded so much. I think he'd be really, really happy with it.
Yeah. Gosh, it's funny you say that you used to, at some point take naps to the show. It's so soothing. I remember when I was in grad school, some of my friends would come over on Fridays after a very stressful week, and he was a de-stressor for us as well. We'd just have our wine and watch Bob Ross, and everybody would go into a relaxed trance. It was just glorious.
Was that your first experience with Bob?
Yeah, it was. It was when the show came up on Netflix, finally. I think I was a little bit young, so I missed the mark a bit, but I would also just catch bits of the show here and there. So it was really nice when it became available streaming to be able to just watch a whole episode and a whole season. And see Peepaw the squirrel pop in and
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Once I hit high school, my friend Shelly and I would call each other before or after Bob
Oh.
Ross to compare notes on what we thought he was going to do. And when he went off of our local station, there was a huge gap. I was going away to college at that point, so I was studying all the time.
Yeah.
So I didn't have as much free time to do it, but I really missed him, and I miss that sort of daily pause. And then when I got back into working with Bob Ross, I reached out to Shelly over social media, and I was like, "You will never guess in a million years what I'm going to do, and this is totally confidential, but oh my God, it's Bob Ross."
It's like a childhood dream come true. That's
It
amazing.
really was. It really was. Yeah, it was great.
Well, yeah, so we've talked a bit about how Bob has, affected you personally and people at the individual level, but I don't know, I've just been thinking lately about this book and about this talk and just what an influence Bob has become on the world in general. It's just been, as we all know, a crazy couple of years. And I wonder if you have any thoughts as to, why Bob is such an important influence now, what he means to us culturally right now in the midst of everything.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I hate it when people say that we're living in challenging and unprecedented times, but let's face it, we're living in challenging and unprecedented times. And I think it's in times like these where society rediscovers the things that give them comfort and joy,
Yeah.
and brings them together. Because honestly, I think the only thing that's going to get us through these unprecedented times is if we get through it together. Bob always said that everybody needs a friend, and I think we do. So, whether you're watching an episode of the show like you did with your friends, whether you're watching it by yourself in quarantine after in these 18 months, whether you're watching it and painting along with Bob, I think because of all of that, whether even if you're just reading a Bob Ross book, buy the book, or looking at his style, or going to the museum that just opened up. I think what Bob offers people and we talked about this, of literally any age or demographic, is the mental space to just stop and think and breathe and be your creative self. Because I think it's only when you're able to ground yourself and take a moment to get your feelings out on a canvas, or get your emotions out on a dance floor, or do something of a creative nature to express yourself, or even just writing something down into a Word document, you're becoming a healthier person. And when you take the time to become a healthier person yourself, you've then given yourself the ability to help other people become healthier people. And if we're all helping each other become healthier people, then everyone benefits from it. We'll all be healthy, and we'll all be creative, and we'll all be supportive, and we'll all be kind. And I think that's what the world needs now. So I think the universe sort of recognized that we needed Bob, and just sort of plopped Bob back into our lives in the best and most nourishing possible way.
Yeah. I love what you said about creativity being part of our health and expression and all of that. And it can be, it was very easy for me personally, and I think a lot of people I know during the pandemic, to just fall into a lot of TV marathons and things like that, which is also awesome. And I would argue very good for you in
Totally.
various ways.
Yes.
But yeah, there is something about creative expression that just turns on a different part of your brain. And I think Bob can really inspire you to go for it in that sense.
Yeah, I think if also if your creativity is sparked, you can appreciate other people's creativity as well.
Yeah,
So
totally.
I am all for vegging on the couch for 7 hours and just letting Netflix just go. I'm totally fine with that. But there comes a point where you need to work that other part of your brain, um, and then look at a painting or look at a film or a TV show. And because you've been working your creative muscles, you can then appreciate the other performers, the other creators' creativity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, changing the topic a little bit,
Uh-oh.
you've written a lot of Bob Ross books about a wide variety of topics, but I'm just curious why Christmas this time? What brought Bob Ross and Christmas together in your
Oh
brain?
my gosh.
Speaking of the creative spirit.
Honestly, it was one of those books where I thought, how could this not have been a book before? Um,
Hmm.
because I just been doing, I wanted to do this for so long, and it just seemed like a natural fit for me. So when I got the opportunity to do it, I jumped at the chance. I was like a kid on Christmas morning. Um, really what it comes down to, and I apologize if this sounds corny, but for me at least, Bob embodies so much of what the holiday season is about. He's
Mm,
about peace on earth, he's about goodwill towards everyone, the beauty of nature, enjoying the quiet time, having fun alone or together, um, having faith in yourself, but also having faith in something greater. And we talked about this earlier, it's about connection
yes.
with your surroundings, with yourself, with other people. Um, Plus, I mean, don't you think books and stories are just such a part of the holiday season anyway?
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, maybe we're biased as book publishing people, but there is something very cozy and holiday specific feeling about it.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to figure out a way to organically and authentically bring the ideas of Bob Ross and Christmas together
Mm,
into something that would really speak to fans of all ages, for sure. I wanted the youngest person and the oldest person to appreciate and get something out of what the book was going to be. But even more important to me was to use the holiday season and the shorthand that conveys to introduce Bob to a bunch of people who don't know who Bob Ross is. And
mm.
I thought because they work so well together, again, two great tastes that taste great together, I thought that was an amazing opportunity that I really wanted to get my creative brain around and figure out the right way to do it.
Yeah. Well, you did it.
Oh, thanks.
Very well. Well, you mentioned the holidays being like a cozy book time for you, but I'd love to hear about some of your personal holiday traditions. Are books part of that for you and your family?
Oh God. We're a book family.
Mm,
So books and reading are part of our everyday life. Um, so the holidays, that sort of blends into our holiday tradition. There's no switch that happens on
mhm.
December 24th or whenever Hanukkah starts that year, where we just shift into holiday reading. Um, but some I've been finding, especially in the last few years, um, that starting in about December, I always start reading my favorite books again, rereading them. Lots of people read the Christmas Carol every year around Christmas
Yeah.
time, which is totally fine. I've never been a fan of Dickens, and you know why? I blame my high school English teacher who made me schlep around a 900-page Dickens omnibus
No.
for like 2 weeks straight, and I had to read Oliver Twist, and I thought I'm never ever reading Dickens again. So for those who enjoy Dickens, I'm super, super happy for you. I never want to read another word. I'll watch the movie. That's totally fine with me.
You still have Dickens trauma you're lugging around.
I
Yeah.
have a little bit of trauma for it and a backache, actually. I was a very small kid, and that was a very big book. So, starting in December, there are two books which sound weird, but I will definitely explain. So the first book is To Kill a Mockingbird,
Mhm.
and the second book is The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Interesting. I would
Yeah.
not have guessed that.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this last year as I was rereading it. I was like, why am I in the mood to read this for the 17th, 20th time again? And I think for me, aside from them both being brilliantly written and incredibly unique, and there's nothing that has been published before or since with quite as much weight, for me at least.
Mhm.
They both talk about things that are at least tacitly associated with the holiday season
Mm.
in a weird way. They both talk about kindness and justice and equality and community and, again, personal connections. And I think when I read them, especially back to back, they really heighten the holiday season for me. So that's on the book side. On the regular side, our more active traditions usually involve just a lot of decorating.
Mm.
As you can see, I started already. Once
Looks
Halloween
great.
happened, I couldn't help myself. But one of my favorite parts is the day we're going to put up our really big tree. I pour myself an enormous glass of eggnog.
Mm.
We blast the Barbra Streisand Christmas album, and we just spend the entire evening putting up all of our favorite ornaments. And then we just spend the rest of the evening just watching the lights go. And we've got lots of little trees and menorahs and dreidels that we scatter throughout the house and just make it a little bit more cozy. And I love going through everything and thinking about the memories that we all have with each of those different objects and treasuring them and moving them around a little bit so it hits the light just the right way. Yeah, it's great. Oh, and of course the food.
Oh my God, you can't forget the food. Yeah.
Yeah, just Christmas cookies all the time, and
Mhm.
it's all good. Yeah. What about you?
That sounds glorious. We do kind of similar things in my household. I also, not to feed into the consumerism aspect of Christmas so much, but I love
Sure.
presents. I love giving them to people. I love getting them. I get really excited about it all, and it just feels infectious. And so I love wrapping presents for my loved ones in really beautiful paper and putting that under the tree. And, the cats get all excited, and we usually end up taking a lot of pictures of them climbing the tree. That's become a new tradition. But really, just like you said, food and family, and there's a specific ambiance, I think, about Christmas when you can smell the cookies in the oven or the stuffing or whatever, and you have that soft glow of the twinkle lights, and everything's dark outside early, and you have that gentle music playing in the background. Yeah, there's something about it that just lights a warm little light in your heart, and not to be too corny, but yeah.
No, it's not corny at all. Although I think this year you guys should spend the evening frying up potato latkes.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I have to add that to the repertoire.
Yeah, because if you like the glow of a candle, the glow of like shimmering oil for 2 hours is really going to be great.
Sounds delicious too.
Splatter
Yeah.
shield. Use a splatter shield. Otherwise,
Everybody remember that if you make it.
holidays in the ER. You don't want that.
No, it gets busy in there. Well, one of the beautiful things about Bob, like you've touched on this a bit, is that he thinks there's an artist in everybody. And that's something that's really spoken to me too. But here you are with so many books under your belt as an author, but do you think how did you think that there might be a writer in you? And was Bob part of that inspiration and pushing you creatively?
Wow, that is a really good question. Um, I thought there might have been a writer in me because my family and my friends and my teachers believed that there might be a writer in me.
Mm.
Um, I've always loved books. One of my fondest, earliest memories is being in the library. I was probably in kindergarten, and really wanting to take out the first Hardy Boys book. And my mom and the librarian convinced me that because I couldn't spell or say the word motorcycle, which I think is in the first sentence of it, that I probably was a little bit too young for that. But oh, look at all these picture books over here.
You're just so ambitious. Yeah.
Yeah. So the picture books were a little bit easier. I was a boy genius, but not that big of a genius. Um, but I just looked at those shelves of books and I was hooked. I loved the way the words and the pictures worked together to tell a full and complete story. And how each of those books was unique from one another, whether it was the packaging or the author or the illustrator styles. And there were so many shelves of them, I could just get lost in it for days and weeks and years. And that's exactly what I did. I was hooked, and I was lucky to really grow up in a house where books were valued,
Mm.
and my imagination was valued and encouraged as well. So I would spend hours playing with my Star Wars action figures and my Smurfs, creating all of these stories. And then when I hit high school and I started doing creative writing, my English teacher, we had to do a play, or something. I can't remember what it was. And I remember having a parent teacher conference and him telling my parents that I got something.
Mm.
I didn't quite know what that meant. And, being a teenager, I was like, oh, I don't, no, I don't know what you're talking about. But I think just hearing other people say that they believed in me,
Yeah.
and that they believed, especially when they believed in me when I wasn't believing in myself that I could do it, which was exactly what Bob was telling us all the time. And I think because of that, I was able to take risks and talk to publishers and put proposals together. And, it wasn't easy. There are always more rejections than there are acceptances, but you learn from all of that. And yeah, it's been pretty, I think it's like 50 books now, which
That's a lot of books.
a lot of books. I'm very tired, Heather.
You're gonna need your
Really
own
tired.
library.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to all of the great teachers out there who really see their kids and encourage them. I mean, that's really incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We also, okay, so we've had a couple of reader questions come through, but I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that I think we'll go ahead and save those for the end. We're going to go through a few more questions with Rob and I here. Rob's going to read the book, and then we'll have some Q&A time at the end. So feel free to keep submitting questions and we'll be sure to get to them. Okay, so let's see. I was also curious about what it's like. So we've been talking about how Bob and people have inspired you to work creatively, but now you're kind of on the other end of things as a writer yourself. And I don't know, how do you feel like you might embody Bob's spirit in some way and inspiring others? Does that feel like a torch that is yours to pass now that you're in that position?
Wow. I will not flatter myself to think I can embody Bob's spirit. I appreciate you putting it out there, but I'm no Bob Ross. But I like to think that in some way and in my small way, I'm carrying his torch to really pay it forward. Creating something is not easy at all. You're going to get a lot of rejection. You're going to get a lot of criticism. uh, outwardly and internally. And it's so incredibly easy to get discouraged and to get stuck and then just stop.
Yeah.
So many people do that. And I think what Bob did and what I try to do is to gently encourage people to get over that hump and to keep going and do it. So as much as I'd like to say that I'm embodying Bob, I don't think I'm doing that. I think I'm spreading the word a little bit. Oh, I think you've muted, Heather.
Sorry about that.
That's
There's
okay.
some construction noise outside, and I didn't want it to interfere.
Oh, good.
Um,
No, not at all.
Yeah, you're very modest about all of your accomplishments.
You can say it, I can't say it.
Well, what was it like for you to write this book? This is good timing. We just had an audience question about this too. Were there any particular challenges? What was your writing journey like on this?
Oh, there are some projects you think are going to be super easy to write. But once you get started, you remember that absolutely nothing is super easy. Because if it's too easy, you're doing it wrong. Whenever I can't speak to other people who write other kinds of books or what their process is. But when I'm sitting down to write a brand new Bob Ross book, and we talked about this a little bit, my primary goal is to honor his legacy and to make sure that I'm providing the reader with a really authentic and thoughtful Bob Ross experience.
Yeah.
The voice needs to be Bob's with my little twist on it or my take on it. In this case in particular, I wasn't just doing that for Bob Ross, I was doing that for Clement Moore.
Yeah, you've got two voices going on.
I've got two pretty big shoes to fill. And then on top of that, I'm doing it tied into an entire holiday season.
No pressure.
Which was no pressure at all. No pressure at all. So to make sure that all of those factors were respectfully presented and celebrated and combined to be something more than they would have on their own, it was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of pressure, but it was the best kind of pressure because I felt really gratified. I felt very grateful for the opportunity to do it, most of all. And then I was super gratified when it was all done. On a practical level, I had to make sure that I was able to put Bob's signature phrases within the established rhymes and rhythms of the poem. Lucky for me, Leo Wilson and Rachel Ferris, my amazing editors, were there to keep me on track for all of that. Writing can often be a really isolating experience. When you say a word over and over and over again, it sometimes loses meaning.
Yeah.
And it takes you a couple of minutes to remember what the word is. That's exactly the kind of thing that can happen while you're writing a book. You keep staring at the same sentences or paragraphs for sometimes literally hours at a time, making sure that they're as good as you can be. You're constantly tweaking them. But because you're so close to it, you're also losing perspective when you're looking at something that close. And honestly, that's why editors and the editorial process are so important to any book project. So to give an example, I'd been working on this section in the poem that originally lists the reindeer, on Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer, and Vixen.
Of course.
And I could not figure out what to do with that section. How am I going to blend Bob Ross and a bunch of reindeer? It took me a couple of days, and then I realized, it's such a distinctive part of the poem that if it didn't work, the entire book would completely fall apart. Because people would be expecting it. And I wanted to make sure that I was giving them as satisfying an experience as possible. So after a few days of really thinking about it, I was like, oh, wait a minute, I got this. Instead of listing the reindeer, I'm going to list Bob's 13 signature colors.
Ah,
And I cannot tell you how relieved I was. I was practically giddy. I was running around the house like, I got it, I got it. And so I started working on that section. It took a couple of days to get it, writing and rewriting it. And once it was practically perfect, I sent it off to Leah and Rachel. And they got back to me pretty quickly, with notes about the whole thing. And they were like, oh, so that section that you were so happy about the 13 colors? It's like, yes. And they were like, you only listed 12 of them.
oh no.
And actually, you didn't list 12, you listed 11 because you repeated one of the colors twice.
Oh no.
And Heather, I mean, I had been staring at this for 2 days and I never realized that I had done that. So that was perhaps the most challenging bit. But once I was able to reconfigure everything, it worked. And we got all 13 in.
That must have been so demoralizing when you got that email back. I'm glad you powered through, though, persevered.
Yes, I powered through with my editor's kindness.
Well, what do you have any advice for anyone who wants to just get started writing, or for anybody who's already writing but maybe needs a little support?
This may sound simplistic, but the best way to get started is just to get started.
Mhm.
You don't worry about the quality of what you're writing, just write. I meet a ton of people at book conventions and pop culture cons who say they've got a great story about something that happened to them, or a story that they have been wanting to tell for years, and they don't know how to start. And I always tell them, just start. Don't think about it being read by anyone else or being published. Just do it. No offense to Nike, but you really just have to do it. If you're interested in being a writer, you're writing because you have to. You've got to get the story or the poem or the play out of your head and into the world, even if that world is just the hard drive on your computer or in your personal journal. So don't think about getting published. That's just gravy. So get it out there. Join a writing group. Take a creative writing class. And I'm going to be honest with you. The first draft of what you're going to do it's never going to be good. It's just not. That's why it's a first draft, and that's why there are backspace buttons and delete buttons and family and friends and editors who you can share that journey with and guide you along the way. So the best way to get started is just to get started.
Yeah, don't overcomplicate things.
Yep.
Well, okay, I have to ask, have you ever tried painting with Bob before? Or do you do any painting too?
I have tried painting with Bob before. Bob will be the first one to tell you that you need to practice. So I'm going to say I've been writing so many Bob Ross books, I haven't had the time to practice painting Bob Ross paintings.
Of
So
course.
let's just put it, we'll end that there.
Okay, well, the last question for me anyway is just what's coming up next for you?
Oh God, there's an awful lot coming up. So in the Bob Ross vein, I just happen to have some visuals.
Great.
So I published this book a few years ago, Bob Ross and Peapod, The Squirrel. There's the first book, and the sequel's coming out. Bob Ross and Peapod and the Happy Accident.
So cute. I love the art.
And then to keep in the Christmas theme, this book just came out. It's I'm Dreaming of a Chris for Christmas, which is a coloring and activity book based on all of your favorite holiday Chris's.
That's so much fun.
And there's Merry Chris Pine. There we go.
Is he your favorite Chris from the book?
I enjoy all of the Chris's. I'm not going to pick favorite. Bob Ross is my favorite.
Good answer. Okay, well, before we get into reader questions, we thought it would be fun to just treat everybody to Rob reading through the book. So bear with me while I share my screen real quick. gonna put up the art from the book. Oops. Okay, and let me know when you are ready, Rob.
I'm ready.
All right, off we go.
All right. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the trees the moonlight shone down on frost-covered leaves. Peapod the squirrel had left his cold nest to nap in Bob's pocket, safe and warm near his chest. Bob tucked Peapod in as he looked out to see a glow gleaming off every rock, bush, and tree. The bright white snow glistened, the brilliant ice shone, as the cold winter wind went from whisper to moan. He looked at the mountaintops covered with snow and saw the ice forming on streams far below. Happy clouds floated by in the sky, oh so clear, the spirit of the season drew ever more near. As visions of peanuts danced in Peapod's head, Bob readied his painting instead of his bed. Now fully inspired, Bob wanted to paint wet on wet style and without constraint. But what colors to use? Which one would be right? Bob used his favorite 13 hues that night. He took out his palette and carefully put on midnight black, the color of soot, on cadmium Indian ochre, all yellow, on greens, sap and phthalo, dark sienna, so mellow, on bright red and titanium white, on alizarin crimson, a deep red, not bright, on Van Dyke brown and blues phthalo and Prussian, those were the colors that he'd dip his brush in. Be they mixed or alone, they're the colors he'd need to paint a fresh landscape so calm and serene. He set canvas on easel and pulled out his brushes, some just for broad strokes, some for final touches. A straight painter's knife and the bucket they're cleaned in. The most important tool, though, was Bob's imagination. He tapped some paint here and some over there. Make a mistake? Don't know? Don't care. They're all happy accidents, no need to worry. A stray brown dot's covered by a nice white blue flurry. Every tree deserves a friend. And look, that one's tired, so give it a bend. Add some shadows, they show the light. And don't forget snow, use a touch that's quite light. As Bob painted the landscape all wintry and quick, he thought of his family, he thought of the sick. He thought of world peace and he thought of a dove. He thought of his friends and he wished them all love. He thought of Santa, the elves, and reindeer. He thought of the promise of a prosperous new year. He prayed for us all, for me and for you. He prayed we'd be kind, whatever we do. As Bob signed his name, the clock struck midnight. It was now Christmas Day, and with all of his might, he vowed to hold on to what he knew was true, that the gifts we are given by nature, by life, are best passed to others. Bob knew that. Do you? For being an artist is not just a job, it's something you are. It's someone like Bob. And though painters are special any time of the year, they're even more special right now, right here. If you don't believe me, try painting yourself, then hang it on a wall or set it on a shelf, and you'll see that you've the gift too. Bob knew you could do it, and now you knew it too. So for this season, and for each season hence, I wish you happy painting, friends, and a heartfelt God bless. Now drink some eggnog.
That was lovely. You did a great job on the paint colors in particular. It was fun to hear about after hearing the story. All right, well, we'll move on to our audience questions then. Joan asks, how has writing all of your Bob-themed books changed you?
Oh my God. How hasn't it changed me? I think it's given me it's given me entree into a whole new audience and a whole new audience of people to connect with and commune with and share creativity with. It's worked creative muscles that I didn't know I had. It's been such an honor to be as small a part of the Bob Ross legacy as I have been, and just to be just a few steps away from that greatness and that legacy, it's just been fantastic. I'm really genuinely honored to even be associated with Bob Ross.
Let's see. Wayne is wondering, how has Bob's popularity been able to transcend generations?
Gosh, I mean, I think you'll have to ask the kids. But I think, Bob speaks to everyone in exactly the same way. He doesn't condescend to anyone. And I think the way he says the things, even if little kids don't particularly understand it, they understand that tone. And they understand the sincerity and that it's coming from a good place. And I think everybody, especially in these unprecedented times, they appreciate calm, and they appreciate being centered and being valued and seen. And I think that's what Bob is able to do for people.
Ariel would like to hear anything you'd like to share about your creative process.
It usually involves staring at a blank screen for a couple of hours and then doing some internet surfing for a little bit. I'm very lucky that I get to work with incredibly creative people, whether it's a licensed property like Bob Ross. I've done some other books with Richard Simmons and Bob's Burgers and Rick and Morty. So I love working and talking with other creative people and being inspired by what they do. When I was working on my Office and Parks and Recreation kids books, it was just great to play in somebody else's sandbox for a little while, kind of like with Bob, really. But they offered a ton of other characters that I could have a lot of fun with. So, sometimes it depends on what the project is. Sometimes it comes a little bit easier or a little bit quicker than other times, but it's at the end of it, it's always incredibly satisfying and worth all of the hard work that went into it.
Well, we have time for one last question here. Linda has asked, would you ever combine Bob and your love of Star Wars? Is there an upcoming Star Trek Bob Ross crossover? I think that's something we would all enjoy.
I think we need to start a petition, but count me in. Yeah, totally. I love it.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Allison from Book Passage.
Thanks.
Hi, thank you guys so much. This was such a delight. It was so fun to listen to you talk about such a delightful book. And we have lots of copies here at Book Passage, and we'll be having signed book plates for them. If they're not here today, they will be here by tomorrow, I think. So feel free to order on our website, or you can call us and order over the phone, or you can come into our two stores, because we are open both in the Ferry Building in San Francisco and in Corte Madera. We'd love to have you purchase this little gift, this little gem for the holidays. It's perfect for that person you don't know what to get but want to make happy. So thank you all for joining us today, and thank you both, Heather and Rob, and we look forward to the next Bob Ross, maybe Star Trek. Take care, everybody. Stay safe and have a wonderful holiday season.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.